I'm like, Steph, I think it's time we do something with this codependency because I'm a nightmare. What I mean by that is like, I was getting so defeated I was so down on myself. I was being so hard on myself. I was just becoming so disappointed in myself because of how codependent I am with you. Where it was like I was being so critical and so hard on myself because I couldn't stop like, oh, is she mad at me? What is going on? I think she's upset. Like of just being so enmeshed together where your moods are affecting my moods. You know, I can't decide what I'm doing today until I hear from you and how you're feeling. Not even what your plan is for the day, but like how you're feeling. And if you're in a bad mood, then I've got to figure out how to fix that. Like all of this stuff. It was getting to the point where I'm just like, I can't do it anymore.
We'll make it out and fall in love tonight.
Hello, Stephanie.
Here we go. Part 2.
Right?
Ready.
What are we calling these episodes? Do we have that figured out yet?
No.
Okay. Anyways, this is part 2 of the podcast. Go back and listen to the previous episode, and you're going to find all about what Stephanie has been up to and the things that she has been creating and that she's that she is releasing and launching into the world. It's an amazing episode. It's incredibly inspiring, and you're going to learn more about Steph in that episode than maybe you have in all the previous episodes leading up to this point, right? You're getting to know who she is in that episode, and that's amazing, and I'm excited. So go listen to part 1, and then part 2 is the Craig experience of what's been going on and what I have been kind of working on, because this year has been a very big year for us. The last few years have been a really big year for us. And this year specifically, in the conjunction with launching this podcast, and I mean, you know, this has been a really big year for us. And it hasn't really slowed down. Like the creation process, what we have been cultivating and bringing forth and all the ideas and everything like that, it's kind of been nonstop.
I almost wonder, if something just occurred to me, like what if this isn't like a big year for us? What if we just live big now?
Yeah.
Because we keep having big years. So we
This is just
keep
life now.
living big. We live big.
We live big. So we decided to do this episode to kind of catch everybody up with some fun things that have been going on behind the scenes. And it turned into a bigger episode than we had thought. Because truthfully, like you just said, right, it's big.
Yeah.
We've got a lot of stuff. I want to talk first about our anniversary.
You want to talk first about that?
Yeah.
You sure?
I do.
Okay.
Yeah. I want to talk about next year. Well, actually, let's go back a little bit.
Let's do it. Let's go back in time again.
Let's go back in time.
Let's go back in
and
time.
tell a little story. I think we've told this story before, but this is actually going to be the unedited version.
Oh.
Because a lot of what we do on the podcast, we edit ourselves.
We do. I'm just like, what story are you telling?
Yeah, we present a version of reality on this show that, yes, it's real and it's true and it's us, but there's kind of like, there's parts around the edges that we kind of blur and that we don't really bring across and that we don't really share. And I want to stop doing that.
Okay.
I mean, it's the whole thing of like, I'm just going to speak, you know, clearly about who I am and what's been going on in my life and everything like that. Right?
Yeah.
You're scared.
I am scared. There's parts that like, there's still like, there's things that like, this is public, you know? There's still like, I'm going to be very public. And the fear is, oh my gosh, you know, I just got done being very public.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so I'm like, what else? Because sometimes it's scary to think that we're going to say everything. And it's also liberating to think we're going to say everything.
Do you want to say everything?
So yes, I'm scared. Yes, I am. And that's not going to go away. And if you need me to not be scared, I can't. So you're going to have to say what you're going to say with me over here trying to not shit bricks.
It's not too bad. I promise, babe. It's not too bad.
Say it, babe.
No, it's in conjunction with everything that we've been talking about on part 1, right? Because when we decided to launch Steph and Craig, it was very much at a time period in our life where we were balls deep in what we were doing. We were very much excited for what was coming up for the following year. Like we had Energy is Love, which was going really well. We had a community space that we were going to be expanding and building out. We had all of these plans that were taking shape and forming. And moving to Tennessee was this massive act of faith on our part this connection to the universe, this belief that everything was going to work out for our, our highest and greatest good. And it's driven by necessity to survive, I think, truthfully. I'm not gonna spiral too much into like why we came to Tennessee and why we moved and everything like that. But I've been going through this phase of my life over the last 4 or 5 years, and I'm 43 years old. It definitely started in my late 30s. And it's this unpacking of who I am and all of these kind of different things. And what that has looked like for me has been a very tumultuous path. It's been a very challenging thing to kind of figure out. And one of the things, I don't know where I'm going. I don't know what I was talking about our 10-year anniversary and how big of a deal it is. But I wanted to talk about, because what's been happening is I have been getting not just inspired, right? But I feel like I have been in flow with the universe. I feel like I have been really tapped into the river of dreams. But I've just been really connected to the flow of energy that I feel like is really manifesty, creative, positive energy. And I trust that connection and that source. And this is something you and I talk a lot about. We kind of have talked about it on the podcast, but it's just this expansiveness. And the more that I've healed and the more work that I've done on my body and the more traumatic experiences that I've been able to process through, the more emotion that I'm able to feel, the more I'm able to connect to my nervous system. I mean, the list of things that allows me to kind of tap in and connect to this, it's great because we've done a lot. I've done a lot. And I'm at a phase right now with it where I can feel, whether we want to call it my solar plexus, whether we want to call it my intuition, all these different labels and names and things like that, that this thing could be connected to and tied to. It feels very strong in me. It feels very much like this vital force energy inside of my belly that I receive messages, I connect to the universe through, I'm able to tap into it myself. It's very powerful. It's very strong. And when it opens up and it feels expansive, I go towards whatever that is. And when it closes down and it feels constrictive, then I know that I need to steer clear of whatever's happening. I need, whether it's an idea, whether it's a direction, whether it's a relationship, whether it's a thought, whether it's whatever it might be, I'm going towards expansion. And it's all coming from this place inside of my belly. So for me, it very much feels like solar plexus, sacral kind of chakra energy that is very much alive and vibrating and flowing and in conjunction with the universe. And a big chunk of what that has allowed me to do is kind of like you and I talk about it, where it feels like I'm kind of like out on the edge of our boat and I'm, looking out into the horizon to see which direction we should kind of be going and which direction we should kind of head. And so far, it's doing great. So far, me trusting that pull and trusting when it feels expansive, we go towards it. And when it feels constrictive, we steer clear of it. It's working really well. And it's continuing to work, compounding upon each other, right? It's like the more decisions that we make coming from that place, the better our life is getting. And we're at a point in our life right now, and I don't mean just like our life, but our relationship, our professional life, our business, all of these different layers and components of stuff where things have really started to take off and connect, and the pieces have started to fit together. And I attribute a lot of it to the ability to trust that sensation in my body and trust that connection that I have, right? And not worry about all the other things that might be, all the other yeah buts. I don't really worry about the yeah buts too much anymore. But
this is a yabbit free household.
Yeah, the process of trusting this intuition, trusting this connection, whatever we want to label it, call it, whatever you out there want to think about it, it's not easy.
No.
Like, it's not something that feels comfortable for me. It's starting to more and more, right? I'm starting to feel more natural with it, but it's not something that I'm like, oh yeah, it's a Tuesday. It's not a big deal. I don't have any problems with it.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
It's something that takes you can't go through it passively. It's like you're trusting
It's
it is.
visceral.
Yes.
Like, there's a lot of work to it, right? There's a lot of, it feels somatic at times where I feel a lot of stuff moving through my body. I feel a lot of blocks come up. Oftentimes I'll have things that will come up in my space and in my life that block that connection to that thing. And I have to let those go. I have to get rid of those things. I have to stop that. Like, it's like whatever stands in the way of me being able to tap in and trust that source energy connection in my body, fuck it, I got to get rid of it. I'm done with it, because this thing is the thing that I'm following now. This thing is the thing that I'm trusting. So last year when we decided to pivot all of that, and we've talked about this before. I think we talked about it on the first episode, but the drive, the inspiration, the decision, the catalyst for that was me, came from this thing. And it was a big fucking change in our life. It involved mortgaging our house. It involved completely pivoting like 180 degrees. It's not, we weren't going in such a completely different direction. We're still podcasting. We're still creating content online, but, we set down what we thought we were doing and picked up this new thing. And the Steph and Craig show's going great, and we're loving it. And it's so much fun, and it's so cool. And I'm constantly in this space of like, what's next? And when I say what's next, or what I mean by that is I have to, like, I'm not satisfied. When I say I'm not satisfied, I'm very satisfied. I'm very grateful. I'm very happy. That's a space that I need a lot of work on, where I need to be not just present in the moment, but also content in the moment. And I want a big life. You said we have we're living big. I want a big life. And that means that we have to constantly be thinking, okay, what's next? What's next? This is working. Cool. How do we make it work more? What's next? What's next? What's next? And a lot of that inspiration for me, as far as like, what do I do next in my life? Where do I go? I've been using weed for, and it's not just marijuana, but it's this wacky Tennessee Delta 8 shit that they're selling here, right? Because we had back in Utah, I don't remember the years or the time frame for it, but at some point Utah legalized marijuana medicinally. So you had to go do the little jump through the hoops to get your card, and then you could go get your stuff. And I started doing that probably a year and a half, 2 years before we moved. Mm-hmm. Would you say? I don't remember time frames.
I don't remember time frames on that, but probably.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I've had, up and down experiences with marijuana, and I don't smoke it because we used to smoke cigarettes, and I'm too afraid to smoke it because I don't want to, it's just too much, right? I'm too afraid of smokes. But edibles, and what it has allowed me to do, at least at this point in my life, the way that I feel connected, the way that I feel like I have used it in positive ways. I've definitely used it in negative ways, but I feel like what it has allowed me to do is it took all of my anxiety, all of my depression, all of that angst, all of the tension in my body, and it just dialed it way, 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 way down, right? And on top of that, it allowed all of these other things that all of that noise was kind of keeping pushed back to be dialed way, way, way up. And everybody's like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Weed would do. Well, like, it's funny because I think weed and marijuana in culture and society has this stigma attached to it, right? There's this camp where people are like, it's medicine. It's the same thing as ayahuasca. It's psilocybin. It comes from the earth. It's this fucking medicinal plant that has served humanity, society, native cultures, all those kind of different things for forever. And I believe that. And then you've got another side of the camp that like it's a drug, it's terrible, you're a stoner, it's a waste of time. And, you know, there's kind of like these polarizing viewpoints in regards to it. And it's something that I haven't ever really used a whole bunch, you know, up until the last few years ago when it became legal in Utah and we got the whole thing. I didn't grow up smoking weed. I didn't grow up using it. It wasn't something that was a big part in my life at all. I had a handful of experiences smoking weed, like when I was a teenager. Actually, I don't even think I was a teenager. I think the first time I 18 or 19, so I guess I technically was still a teenager. And having all of my anxiety and stress and everything just really turned down, and being able to allow my body to just relax. Like, truthfully, that was one of the biggest gifts, was it took all of the tension in my body and just turned it down. And my body just got to go, and I could feel my body release and let go. It sucks because then I could feel it come back online after the fact, right? But consistently over time, what has happened is my body was able to relax and let go of just tension, anxiety, right? An activated nervous system. And now I'm able to maintain that calm, regulated nervous system more and more on a regular basis without marijuana. And I'm still using it, because what has happened in the last year with my Delta 8 weird, you know, like Tennessee is great because they just figured out how to work around whatever asinine laws in place. And they've got some sort of like Delta 8 or Delta 9, or it's all of these different weird, you know, chemical strands and things like that, that you're like, well, it's not marijuana, it's this thing. I'm like, you sure? Because I'm pretty sure this tastes and feels like marijuana and does exactly the same shit that marijuana does. So I'm a big fan of this Delta syrup that I've been taking for a while now. And it still does the same thing. It relaxes my body. I can totally just get high and have crazy silliness and everything like that, right? But what I've been doing is I've been working on it. And what I mean by that is, like, I very much dose with the intention of work. So I'm constantly in the processing phase of shadow work, of inner child work, of being able to reflect and experience things differently. And I'm also able to connect, at least this is what it feels like, right? I always have this inner voice in my head that it's like, these are just the things that you tell yourself to justify your ability to get high every day. And you're like, yes, that might be the case. And it doesn't negate this other thing where I am very much tapped in and connected to that flow of energy that we're talking about, where it's like, that feels expansive.
That's really important, to recognize the coexisting of both things being true, like the coexisting of it, because it's really easy to bypass the other and be like, not allowing because here's this thing, or shadowing over and invalidating because of this other. So that the fact that, yes, there is a part of it that is like what you said, getting high every day, and the truth still insane in conjunction with doesn't invalidate the other, is that it's really healthy in the sense, and you're healing and you're creating and you're like, you're doing some deep work with it. And to find that that's something that I've even struggled with, like seeing and to see like, this is true, that both are true. There is the fact that this is like, things sometimes come with a cost. Sometimes they come with, there's a price, and it's not always a bad price. It doesn't mean like, oh, everything has a price. Yeah. But sometimes
it's an exchange.
It's an exchange. That's the perfect word. Thank you for saying that. There is an exchange, and you're allowing the healing in the process to take place, coexisting with the natural exchange of things. And that's a big deal. I haven't heard you say it that way, or I haven't been willing to hear it that way. I'm not sure which is true. But I'm hearing you now, and I'm hearing you say that.
Yeah, and it's interesting too, because it's something that is so, and obviously, like, I'm not going to go into our stuff too much.
Yeah.
But you've got issues with it. It's one of those things that you're not a fan of a lot of times. You don't like it. It's like you have, and all of the reasons why that we don't need to go into and talk about on this podcast right now. But
Yeah, it's not all or nothing. It's the excess that is triggering at some point. But like I said, I'm hearing that.
Yeah, yeah. And so I've had to do it at times, and truthfully, at a lot of times I've done it. When I say in opposition to you, it's not me standing up and saying I'm doing this thing in opposition to you, but it's me choosing to do something that I know you don't approve of and that you don't like and that you're not a fan of. And that's a hard thing to do as well, right? But what it's doing, like I said, it's giving me this opportunity to really tap into this amazing energy that I feel like is inside of me. And then it literally feels like I'm getting, like my antenna goes up and then the universe sends information in for me to listen to and to watch. And some of it is, when I say it's not useful, it's like getting this barrage of signals and information that comes in, right? And over the course of the last year or whatever, right, I have learned how to, again, trust the expansive part, because it's like, okay, my solar plexus opens up and says, okay, I'm ready to receive information, universe. And the universe says, cool. And then the universe just dumps everything, right? It doesn't really meter it very well. It's just like, you're open, here's all this ideas, thoughts, creativity, shadow. It's like suddenly everything just comes flowing in. And I've learned how to be able to like be in the water with all of it and recognize when it not drop something, but recognize when it's something that, oh, let's pick that up and run with that. That's something that's for us right now, or for me, or in my healing, or for us in our life. This podcast is a perfect example of it, where the universe said, do that. And I'm all, are you sure? Because that looks pretty scary. And they're all, yeah, do that. I'm all, cool, I'll do that. Right? But it's hard. It's not easy. And so last week, 2 weeks, I don't even know when it was, because time is bananas, probably because I'm high all the time. No.
Time's bananas for me too, and I'm not. So
Yeah,
time's
no,
bananas.
yeah, it's nothing to do
You're
with
not
being
doing
high.
anything wrong.
But it was on one of these experiences where I got this idea for what we could do next year, because next year is our 10-year anniversary, 10 years of being married. We got married in 2015 and next year's 2025. So when you do the math, it's our 10-year anniversary, which is a really big fucking deal for you and me.
Yes, it is.
For a bunch of different reasons.
Yes.
I think first and foremost, one of the biggest reasons why it's a big deal for us is because I don't think either one, well, I'll just speak for myself. I didn't think we were going to make it. I didn't think that we were going to make it 10 years. There was a phase of our relationship when everything was getting really, really bad that I think there's a part, when I say I knew, right? I was always afraid, but I feel like there was a part of me that was like, well, there you go again, fucker. You fucked it up and failed. You messed up another fucking relationship because of your choices, actions, and decisions that you had, an inability to change or grow or whatever. And now you're going to go through the process of having to get divorced again and end another relationship. So there was a part of me that was like, fuck, that's the last thing that I wanted to do. And so I'm surprised that we made it on one hand. And then there's another part of me that ain't surprised at all. I'm just not surprised in the slightest. You and me go much longer than 10 years. But 10 years is a big deal.
It's a big deal.
Right. It's
Yeah.
also kind of like a milestone in a sense. It's for all the different reasons, it's a big deal. And so the idea that I was having, and I was, it was also kind of like percolating in the background where it's like, what are we going to do? We got to celebrate. It's a big deal. We should come up with something fun to do. Right. And in one of those moments of being high, but also being in this really good creative flow, the universe sends through this message, and my good little solar plexus belly, whatever, just opens wide up and it feels super expansive. And I'm like, oh, that's big. That's really big. That's expect the best, plan for the greatest right there, right? We have a barometer now where it's, oh, expect the best, plan for the greatest. Cool. And so what we're going to do next year is we're going to go on 10 trips to celebrate our 10-year anniversary. right? Not one big trip, not just celebrating our anniversary on the anniversary. We're going to do that, of course, but we're going to do 10 trips over the course of next year. And we're going to content it up.
Yeah.
Like it's going to be this whole thing where you're going to get to come on these trips with us. And we're going to do, I don't even know everything that we're going to do yet. Not just trip wise, but like it's going to be a really big deal. And we're going to figure out what it all looks like. And we're going to do these 10 trips together. And we're going to, I don't even fucking know. We're going to create all sorts of different content and vlogs and just tons of different stuff to highlight this experience. Because I think it's a really cool big deal. I think not just us making it 10 years, but it's an awesome experience. And that's what we're going to do next year. And that's something that we're putting together now in the early stages. And we're trying to figure out, there's not a couple of things. There's quite a few things that we have to figure out in order to make that kind of thing happen.
Yeah.
And one of those things is financially, we have to figure out how that's going to happen. And to be brutally honest with you listening to the podcast and or watching it right now, we are not in a financial state where that is something that we should be planning.
Right.
We're not sitting over here thinking like, hey, we got an extra $1 million. What should we do with
this will be easy. We're like,
we have got to figure out the financial aspect of it. And we have to figure out the financial aspect of how we're going to actually, get groceries in a couple of months. So we've got some work cut out for us.
Yes.
But what I believe wholeheartedly is that not only are we going to figure it out, but it's going to be amazing. Like it's all going to work however it's supposed to work. So I trust that and I believe that. But that's a really, really big deal. And again, that comes from the last few years. And it's not even just the last few years, right? I keep talking about we moved to Tennessee. We had all of these like moments and we're trusting the universe and we're leaning in. And our entire relationship has been that way.
Yes, it has.
The last 12 years of our life of being together has been that way. And it's easy to go back and look and see how it's all been connected and one thing leading us to the other. And we have gone through challenge after challenge after challenge to get to the place that we're at today. And challenges aren't done. Obviously, we get to go through some more challenges always, but we're going to figure this part out. We're going to figure out what's next. We're going to figure out how to do it. And not just the wisdom, but like the comfort that comes from trusting in a higher power is a feeling that I've not really had throughout my whole life. And now that I have it, it feels so good. It just feels amazing to be able to just go, oh, I don't have to figure it all out myself. I'm supported in this space, not just obvious with you and everything like that. You're incredibly supportive, but I love having the ability to trust in the universe and know that all I've got to do is show up on any given day and do what's in front of me. So that's coming next year. That's a big deal. And you're going to hear us talking more and more about it. We're going to start creating some content around it as well and kind of bring you along the journey of what it all looks like on how we're planning it and putting it together. And we're going to have to figure out how to get it sponsored in some capacity because some of the trips are going to be, some fun little weekend trips. We've got a lot of stuff here in Tennessee. We're close to the coast so that we can drive to, the Atlantic Ocean or the Gulf of Mexico. We can go down to Florida. We've got a bunch of different trips in mind that we're going to start putting together. And then you talked on the last episode about stuff that you're launching, stuff that you're rolling out. And this is what's been really interesting is the last few months, it's really cool too, because I've been thinking about it from like seeing how it all starts to play out, right? Because essentially it was like around the beginning of the year, I don't know if you remember this, but around the beginning of the year, I started talking to you about like, I think we need to really look at being codependent.
Yes, I remember.
Right? So if you haven't heard yet, we picked up pickleball and we're having a blast. It's super, super fun. And if you haven't started playing yet, I hope that you do soon. And if you do, we want to help you by avoiding what we did. See, when we started playing pickleball, we just went on Amazon and found some paddles that looked cool. Little did we know, but they actually were hurting our pickleball game and holding us back from being the absolute best pickleball players that we could be. And when we found out that there was a pickleball paddle company here in Tennessee, actually not too far from where we live, we got super excited. Element 6 was started by a couple of brothers who were passionate about the sport and decided to go in and make their own paddles because they needed something that served their purposes a little bit better. Lucky for us, they're now sponsoring the podcast. And I can tell you from experience that their paddles definitely make a difference. The very first time I picked up their paddle and just held it in my hand, I knew I was going to be a better pickleball player as soon as I started playing with it. And it turns out I totally am. They have paddles for everybody, for the beginner, the intermediate, and the pro level. Head over to our website, stephandcraig.co, and click on the link for E6 pickleball paddles. I highly recommend their brand new one, the Torrent, which is what we play with. When you're ready to buy, make sure to use the code Steph and Craig. Not only will you save 10%, but the guys over at E6 are also going to send you out a free gift along with your order. So pick up pickleball, pick up a new paddle from Element 6. We hope to see you on the court soon. Not too long ago, I went down the rabbit hole of trying to find us some new clothes that didn't have all sorts of toxic stuff in them. I was tired of wearing synthetic material when I worked out, when I did things like jiu-jitsu and yard work and hiking and everything like that, because it wasn't really breathable and it started to stink a lot as well. Well, lucky for me, I found Woolly clothing. Woolly uses natural merino wool, and I'm a huge fan. All of their clothes are super soft and they feel really, really good next to your skin. Their clothes are naturally moisture repellent, so when you're wearing them and working out, it almost feels like it's cooling you off. They're also odor resistant, so they don't stink after you wear them. They have a great line of men and women's clothing, and if you've never tried merino wool, I highly recommend Woolly. I've got their boxers on right now. Every episode of the podcast, I wear one of their V-neck shirts. I'm really excited for where the weather starts to change and it starts to cool off a little bit, because then I get to put on my Woolly hoodie again. Head over to our website at stephandcraig.co and click on the link for Woolly. And when you're ready to check out, be sure to use the code Steph and Craig. You'll save 15% on your order. Show them some love and get yourself a great pair of merino wool socks or underwear, or boxers, shirts, pants, shorts, tank tops, workout gear, you name it. Woolly has it. I'm like, Steph, I think it's time we do something with this codependency, because I'm a nightmare. Like, what I mean by that is, like, I was getting so defeated on, like, I was so down on myself. I was being so hard on myself. I was just becoming so disappointed in myself because of how codependent I am with you. Where it was like I was being so critical and so hard on myself because I couldn't stop, like, this process of, like, oh, is she mad at me? What is going on? I think she's upset. Like, all the stuff that we talk about sometimes on this show, of just being so enmeshed together, where your moods are affecting my moods. I can't decide what I'm doing today until I hear from you and how you're feeling. Not even what your plan is for the day, but like how you're feeling. And if you're in a bad mood, then I've got to figure out how to fix that. Like, all of this stuff. It was getting to the point where I'm just like, I can't fucking do it anymore.
Yeah.
I can't do it anymore. It was starting to, like, eat away at me. And so I brought it up to you. And it was an uncomfortable conversation. And it's been one of many uncomfortable conversations that we've had this year. But there are important conversations. And part of us healing codependency together, and it's interesting too, because we're, this is the Steph and Craig show, and if you follow us on social and everything like that, right, you see us together a lot of our content is together. Everything about us and what we're presenting to the outside world is this package deal of you and me together. And we're trying to figure out how to do that in healthier ways. And not only that, but also, like, represent it differently and showcase it differently, because it would be really easy for us to just continually lean into Steph and Craig and not have separateness.
Yeah.
Not have Steph and what Steph's doing, and have Craig and what Craig's doing. And I think if you and me had at some point had a conversation 6 months ago or 2 months ago or fucking last week and been like, hey, you're going to do a bunch of this stuff all by yourself, meaning like, yes, I'm supportive and yes, I'm, all of that kind of stuff, but you're creating a bunch of stuff right now, Stephanie, that I'm not involved in at all, right? I have nothing to do with it. And same thing. I have started creating a bunch of stuff that is separate from Steph. And you talked on the last episode about a bunch of things that you're going to start sharing, books that you're writing, all of this kind of stuff that's just going to be Stephanie. Right?
Ooh, I don't know why that
there.
hit so hard. I suddenly felt like such an asshole and such a selfish. Ooh, that I'm going to have to fill into that. That totally made me feel like a horrible person for that second. I'm just like, I'm the worst. Interesting.
Codependency.
Right? I've been feeling really strong and secure about it too. And I can see how us working so hard on healing codependency is allowing all of these cool things to be created.
Start happening, right?
Because I'm supposed to do these things and you're supposed to do these things. And we also do these things because we create really well together.
Yeah.
That's a really cool thing that we have. But there's so much more. And because we're doing that, now we're like all of these things are coming through and it's really great. And I felt really positive. But as soon as I heard that, I'm like, oh, there's the seed underneath. I definitely feel selfish and like a horrible person. And like,
yeah,
I got to look at that. I got to look at that more because it just was like, oh, I'm still here. I'm still right here. I'm sitting right here.
Well, I think like for me, it's the uncomfortable thing that we're sitting with all the time now.
Yeah.
Because we but we're choosing to spend time on things that don't involve the other person. And I know that might sound like, I'm always thinking about the critic out there that's listening, that it's like, oh, that's, like, I feel like we're super behind the curve sometimes when it comes to relationships, because what we're doing is really healthy. What we're doing is what you're supposed to do, like the interdependence, but not, the codependent, all of these things that we're talking about. I criticize and judge from this, I've got this part of me that criticizes and judges it, and it's a very negative view. Before you help me correct it and fix it.
I'm not going to help you correct it and fix it. I'm just like, there's another point of view here that you don't have to see, but I don't subscribe to that completely. I don't feel like we're behind the curve on that. Like I just have a different point of view, but I'm definitely going to say it, but you finish what you're saying.
Yeah. Well, I don't think we're behind. I think the majority of people are codependent. And I think the majority of the people out there in relationships are in codependent relationships. And not like, it's always a sliding scale. There's always a big, broad spectrum to talk about. And we've talked about it on the podcast too, where I think culture is designed and set up that way to program us into codependency through film, TV, the way that we're raised, society, religion, family units. Super toxic, super codependent, really not healthy. So you're right. I don't think we're behind the ball. I think we're actually out ahead of the curve by being able to maintain our relationship in a healthy way, but then also grow and expand into becoming fully autonomous kind of people into our own thing. And maybe we're behind the ball. It doesn't matter.
Okay. I think I'm just going to go ahead and say it then.
Go ahead.
First of all, everything you're saying, that is fact, right? There's a part of it and where we're at that is true. And then it's like how you were talking about marijuana and the excessive use and the healing use. Like there's different exchanges that take place. And the truth is when you and it's no secret, when we got together, it was very convoluted and chaotic. And we went through a lot of toxic things. You spoke about on this one about how there were some unhealthy choices. There's unhealthy dynamics. You and I, it's really amazing that we made it. The fact that we can get on and talk to couples about how to heal through things is because we walked the walk. It's not because our relationship is great. It's not because we've always been really connected and bonded and happy and loving and open and vulnerable with each other and healthy. Right. It's because we tried to blow it up. And I think the only reason we didn't completely demolish it is because there was codependency texts that didn't allow us to go, and the universal, right? But we did our best And depending on the day, I can see that equally. And some days I'm like, I'm just going to point fingers. And I feel like some days you're pointing fingers. We did our best as a couple to run this thing off the rails. And we had to get really serious about our relationship in healing it. We had to get really serious about the fact that we cared about each other. And we had to get really, really serious about our own healing. And we took our personal healing very seriously. I worked on my shit and you worked on your shit. And we came together. Now, with all that, we had a pandemic happen, which brought us very close. We had different jobs where I was working out of the house and you were at home. And of course you were going, you had to go on
travel all the time.
Travel for work. I'm like, what is this? I was going to say trips. I'm like, that's not the word. That doesn't fit.
Yeah.
That's not the context. Even though sometimes I felt like you got to go on trips and I had to stay and do laundry and I didn't get to go anywhere. It was very like, you're like, I'm sick of going. And I'm like, God, I would love to get out of this house. So there was like so many things that happened there. But then when the traveling ceased, a lot of people got forced into being into the same space. We're not unique there. We're not behind the curve. The world shut down. And we used that in a way where we built. We didn't tear each other down. It could have. I mean, we did pick up drinking quite a bit during the pandemic.
We drank so much during 2020. So nice.
But we used that as healing. And now the things that we do, we work together. So we're here. We're not shutting out the world. It kind of like spun in this way. So we are together a lot, which means we had to work extra hard at being able to see the codependency and being able to heal it. And on top of that, when we were so shredded in our relationship, there was so much, there was such a divide because of the toxicity that codependent for a while served a purpose. It was there's, one person's poison is another person's medicine, right? There came a point where when we were doing that, that was learning how to lean into each other. That was learning how to heal together. That was learning how to love each other. That was learning how to coexist with each other without hurting each other. And then we just crossed a little farther and farther and farther into where it became not the healthy choice for us. And we had to work on unwinding that and not being so codependent. It's that pendulum swing where you have to find the balance, but the exchange happens. So this was a healing thing for us. And then when it came time to start to become interdependent, that was hard and that's scary because it's like, I know what that looks like. It looks like chaos. And we had to no, it doesn't. Even if that means we end, that's a healthy move. And then it doesn't. We're getting stronger. We're enjoying, I think, I'll speak for me. I'm enjoying time with you more now that we are having separate things to do. I'm enjoying the time that we do that we have together more. I'm embracing my breaks. I'm embracing solitude. I really definitely like time to myself, but I'm embracing that more and I feel more present in our time together. I feel like our cultivating this interdependence is making our connection stronger.
I would totally agree.
So I don't feel like we're behind. I don't think we did anything wrong. And that's not like we're free from, I just there's a perspective of it. We were healing. And when that medicine stopped being medicine and started being poison, right? Medicine, poison, it doesn't have to be that extreme, but those are the words I'm using for context. Then we're like, this isn't working. Let's shift this because we're healing on this. So I think we're doing a good job. And I want to, there's a part where codependency, when you're healing, there's a part where it serves. You're not in a really terrible spot and then start to heal and then just do everything healthy. It's impossible just to get it right. There's steps that happen along the way. It's a journey. So that's why I'm like, I don't agree with that. I don't think and you can. For you, maybe you need to. But for me, actually, we made some choices that were a part of our healing so we could get healthy enough in that space to heal further beyond that, is my point of view.
Yeah, and I totally agree with it. Everything you just got done saying, I totally agree with it. It's just the acknowledgement that I have another part of me that is a critical motherfucker, right? Another part of me that's in there judging everything that I'm doing and looking at everything through the lens of you are failing and you're lying to yourself. And it's only a matter of time until the house of cards comes crumbling down. You know, that part of me is still along for the ride.
I hear you.
That part of me ain't going anywhere anytime soon. And truth be told, this is a recent occurrence, right?
Yeah.
When that part of me speaks up and, you know, I hear its voice inside of my head and it starts to kind of want to take over the wheel and control the narrative of where we're going, I just turn and look at it and I acknowledge it. And I'm like, hey, dude, I see you. I understand that this is really scary. I understand that things are really, really hard right now. Like, to be honest with everybody, I want to be honest with everybody. I know that we talked about whether or not we were going to talk about this on the podcast or not.
Oh, boy.
And if you know, after the fact, if you decide that you don't feel real comfortable with this going out there, that's totally fine. I understand that. And we can edit it out.
Okay.
I was working for a job. Back after I got fired from being a police officer, whole life change took place during that time period, not just because of being fired, but it was a very tumultuous time period in my life. And one of the things that came out of that was another job. It was a connection with a company that manufactured float tanks. And I became the representative for that company here in the U.S. The company was based out of the U.S. It was based over in Asia. And I was the representative for that company when it came to customer support and service and also actual installation of the float tanks. So if you bought one of these float tanks, then Craig would come and set it up. And that's what I did. That's why I traveled all the time, because I was out there setting up tanks all over the country, did some tanks up in Canada, got to go to Ireland once. I mean, it was a lot. Traveled a ton for it. And that was the job that I had pretty much up until July of this year. And it was a job that I was a salaried employee, and it was putting, it allowed us to be able to create and do what we're doing now while we were still, I was still doing that job. So we had an income coming from there. So we weren't as concerned about the slow build of this thing that we're building now with the Steph and Craig show and all of our content and the social media and everything like that. That has been our passion and our drive for a really long time. But as far as what's been funding everything, it was this other job. And then I got fired from that job in July. And we have a small amount of money left over from savings from when we mortgaged our house at the beginning of the year in order to pay for everything that you're seeing on camera here. And that small amount of money that we have left over is running out soon. And we don't have a ton of income coming in yet from everything that we're building and growing with the podcast and with the show and everything else. So we're at a position where, like, things are starting to become more of a reality in regards to, like, we have to decide what's going to happen next, what's going to take place. And what you and I are choosing to do, and continually choosing to do, like every day, I think it's kind of a choice every day, right? It's like every day I make this choice, and I'm assuming you do too, but it's like every day I'm choosing to believe in this thing that we're creating. And I'm not just talking about the show and the podcast and our content and social media. I'm talking about our life. I'm choosing to believe that we are creating this beautiful life for us, where we get to hang out in the studio that we built in our house, talk to people through the power of the internet, and release a podcast. And somehow all of it just gets to work to where this is what we do now. And it's scary as fuck, because that other voice, that critical voice, that part of the, that inner voice, it's not an inner voice, it's just a part of me, is like, what are you doing? This is not a good idea. Stop going in that direction. You need to go get a fucking job and start making a regular paycheck so that you can pay your bills and keep a roof over your head.
Why is this bitch over here playing with flashcards?
Right?
Like, go do something. Right?
You're all, are you taking a nap again at 2 PM, Craig? Are you tired, Craig? Do you need to take a nap again? Okay. Yeah, take a nap. That's great. That's going to help us out a lot. And I'm just like, yeah, dude, you get to be heard. You get to be seen. I understand that it's scary, but we're trusting this other thing and we're believing in this other thing, and it's happening. Like, slowly, every single day, we just get more signs, more inspiration, more like the universe literally is just like, here you go. We're like, how's this going to work? And then the next day we wake up and they're like, this is how it's going to work. And we're like, okay, cool. And all of like what happened was I got fired in July from this other gig. So suddenly our main source of income is gone. And I think the following week or the week, like right around the exact same time, it was in July, we got monetized on YouTube and started to get some sponsors for the podcast. All of that happened right around the same time period. And then it's just been like one thing after another after that, where we continually are getting signs of like, hey, how does this work? This is how this works. How does this work? This is how this works. So it's been really, really cool. Mm-hmm. And it's this ginormous, or at least it feels like it, right? That's the other thing that I think is really funny. I was going to say, it's this ginormous leap of faith because that's what it feels like. But again, I'm going back to like, I am always being carried and supported by the universe. There's no big leap of faith here. This is just the path that is my path. I'm literally walking my path. So everything that's happening to me is for me. Everything that I'm experiencing right now is what I'm supposed to be experiencing. Like, I'm not taking leaps of faith. I'm just walking. This is just the path. This is just where we're going. So it's okay.
Yeah.
In conjunction with all of these things that are happening, we've decided to do more things, right?
We have.
Go ahead.
You side quested me a little bit. You're like when you saw something, there's like something else that.
Oh, on part one.
And I know I've already side quested you once, but I have one more that before you start to like, 'cause I really want you to get into what you're creating.
Okay.
And it's a really big deal and it's really cool. But I've heard something that I haven't heard before. And you know how we talk about recencies and lifetimes? Uh-huh. You have this story of getting fired. You have the story of getting dumped. You have the story of like not being chosen. Are you seeing a little?
Keep going.
And what happened is that like what was going, the relationship ended. You didn't do anything wrong. You're not in trouble. You didn't get fired because you're getting punished. And the story is just like, it stopped working. The relationship, like what was like the fit with the company and the job, like there was essentially like outsourced. There's, you weren't traveling anymore. And the setting up online, there was it just started to get like deviated out. You were like reducing your role in that, and it stopped being a fit. And it was like the relationship ended. You didn't get dumped. You didn't get punished. You didn't get like not chosen. It just like finished. It finished.
Yeah.
And I was just like, I hadn't heard that. I'm like, you've like, I wonder like if you, like, I invite you to get curious about what that story actually was, because I mean,
do you remember people? It's so hard because we record a lot of stuff. A lot of it you watch and see, and then a lot of it, well, the stuff that we don't record. Anyways, we have conversations sometimes that I don't know if it was a podcast. I don't know if it was a fucking reel. I don't know if it was a conversation on the way to pickleball. I don't know if we're falling asleep at night. We talk so much. I don't remember where this came from.
And a lot of it is documented, yeah.
Do you remember... I talked about recently having awareness of, it was the friendship episode. That's what it was. So the episode of the podcast that was all about friends, where I just want to be chosen.
Yeah.
Right. I just want like, I want a best friend out there to pick me. I want to feel like I was picked because my program is that I was abandoned. My program is that I'm dumped. My program is that I'm fired. Like, my program is that I'm not good enough and people move on from me, that they basically let go of me, get rid of me. That's my story. And you bringing it up right now and highlighting it, thank you. It's a good little ADHD side quest that you just took us on. And it is something that I want to sit more with because it has been coming up in my space. The way with which I see myself in relationship to my life and to the world around me is very much, in a lot of ways, still from that mentality of being abandoned and being tossed aside and not being chosen and picked. And I got a lot of work to do there. But as you were talking about it, you're like, just the reason for, like, that job just ended. It ran its course. Like, that's what happened. And I'm all, yeah. The universe was like, hey, dude, we got to clear out some space here because you got some more things that are coming in.
Yes.
Right? You are walking a path that it's like, that's no longer on your path because where you're walking, there's stuff that, your path is full. Keep walking. There's things coming.
Yeah. If it's on your path, it's for your path. I mean, sometimes shit's got to get off the path so stuff can be on your path. And you can't have everything on your path.
Can't have everything on your path.
Right? You don't want everything. You don't want everything on your path.
Looking for the perfect gift for someone that you love? Try thinking beyond the material things and get them the most unique, unforgettable gift possible. A custom song from Songfinch. Songfinch lets you create an original studio quality song inspired by your own life and the ones you love. It's completely unique, personal to you and your story, and will last a lifetime. Songfinch walks you through an easy 4-step process to create your original song. Just tell them who the song's for, provide some personal details about your story, and let them know the type of song that you want. Then pick your favorite Songfinch artist, or get matched with one. They'll write, record, and produce your custom song in just 4 to 7 days. Head over to our website. It's stephandcraig.co and click on the link for Songfinch. When it comes time for checkout, use the code Steph and Craig. You're going to save $20 off your order. Once you get your custom song, be sure to tag us because we want to hear it. We're probably a lot like you, where we had some pans that had been kicking around our kitchen since we met, actually. They're over a decade old, and it was time for them to go. Lucky for us, we found Heritage Still. Heritage Still offers premium cookware that's made right here in the USA. It's actually made here in our backyard in Tennessee. We ditched our old pans and we got ourselves an entire set of Heritage Still. All of their cookware has 5-ply construction, which gives you superior heat distribution and retention when cooking. They also offer a lifetime warranty, which is really hard to find nowadays. Their cookware is versatile for all cooktops. We have a gas range and we absolutely love the way our Heritage pans heat up. They're chemical-free, oven-safe, easy to clean, and Heritage Still is committed to sustainability. They use environmentally conscious practices when producing their cookware. For listeners of the podcast right now, you can save 10% on your order. Head over to heritagestill.us/Steph and Craig, and don't forget to use the code Steph and Craig at checkout to save that 10%. Yeah, it's definitely that part of me that is a little kid that's like, everybody that I've ever been friends with, I'm going to be friends with forever. And you're like, that's not really plausible. I'm like, yes, it is. I'm never letting go of anything. That's all abandonment wound. That's all lack mentality. That's all stuff that I can definitely work on some more and bring more awareness to.
You're so worth it.
So what's coming up for Craig is we'll take you back on a journey.
Yes.
We're going to go back in time.
Yes.
Back to Steph and I got married in 2015. Got the job that I was currently working at the time was freed up from my path so that I had space to grow and expand into what you see today. And one of the things that I dove really heavily into back in 2017 was men's work. I came across this organization called Everyman. I got really involved in that space. I went on a bunch of retreats, workshops, weekend things. I started a men's group back in Utah that met every week for I think 4 years. I think it was finally 2021 after COVID and everything that we set it down and disbanded it. But I got really involved into that space, which was incredibly powerful. You know that. I mean, it was a huge catalyst for my growth. It was a huge deal. And somewhere in that time frame, I started to feel this pull to create kind of like my own version of men's work stuff. I love working with men. I feel like I have a really good talent and skill set to be able to sit with guys and hold space for men to process and feel through deeper emotional things that men really struggle with. It's one of my superpowers. It's something that I've always been able to do. Like I remember being able to do it as a kid. And there's trauma-based components to it where we're, part of the reason why we're empathic is because we had to be in order to survive and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. But I'm also just really good at being able to sit with people. And it was something that I saw, it was like a massive skill set that I had as a cop, where it was like people were in some live action traumatic experiences happening, as they were going on. And I was able to support them through some of those experiences and sit there with them. So during that time period, I wanted to create my own thing. And what it was going to look like was this men's group organization type thing with retreats and with, I didn't really have, we didn't have it all fleshed out 100%, but it was going to be like online stuff and retreats and in-person things. And I think there was a podcast associated. I don't remember if we had, because we were doing Energy is Love at the time as well.
I don't remember there being a podcast, but you had all the other things. Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah.
There might have been.
Yeah.
But.
And the thing that I created was called Brave Men Dare. And we were even getting ready to host the first retreat, which was this weekend retreat, like had everything booked and scheduled and had a couple of guys signed up for it and everything. And then it all just kind of fell apart and dissolved into the ether. And the narrative that I have surrounding it was that I felt that I just didn't have the courage to see it all through. Because when we started launching that retreat and trying to sell that retreat, it wasn't selling as quickly as I had expected it to, right? I think we had like 12 or 15 spots or something like that. And I got really nervous. And then I was just like, I bailed on it, canceled it, and then just kind of like canceled everything else in relationship to that space. So I put Brave Men Dare to rest and just moved on. And life continued on, and we had all sorts of other things that we got involved with and dealt with and processed. And eventually, here we are in Tennessee, right? Who the fuck knew that we were going to come here? And then in the last couple of months, as you and I have been doing all of this work that we've been doing and healing all of these things that we've been healing and healing codependency, which means embracing more of our own individuality, we sat down yoga because we had been teaching yoga together. And I think this is another big component to the codependency part too, where, there was something about us teaching yoga together that wasn't working anymore. And we know all the external reasons that you and I have, all of our personal reasons why it wasn't working for us as well, that had nothing to do with us in our relationship or anything like that. I don't want to make it seem like you and I were having conflict, but we started to set down some things, and I don't remember 100% how it happened. Because most good things are like that. You're like, I don't know where this fucking came from, right? Out of left field in a sense. But I have a buddy of mine whose name is Ben. And Ben started talking. He asked me if I had ever thought about doing another podcast. And I have. It's something that, it's not like I've thought about doing another podcast, but I have a lot of ideas when it comes to podcasting. And podcasting has been a big part of our life for the last 8-9 years. If you're not familiar, we had another podcast that we did for a long time with like 380 plus episodes called Energy is Love. It's still available. If you go look, you can find it on our YouTube channel. You can also just find it wherever you listen to podcasts. But we've been podcasting for a really long time. And when he asked me if I had thought about doing another podcast, I had at that point. And it was this funny moment, I think, part of it was I was at jiu-jitsu, and Ben does jiu-jitsu, and I was high, and I was sitting off to the side, and Ben and I were hanging out in between rolls, and we were just having a good time laughing and joking and being silly and not teasing everybody that was still rolling and making fun of everybody, but we were having fun having our conversations. And what we did was like this running commentary about what was going on the mat and the different roles that were happening, and then just bantering back and forth with each other. And suddenly in my mind, I got this vision. I'm like, this would be a fucking great show. This would be a fucking great podcast where Ben and I sit here at jiu-jitsu talking about all sorts of different fun things. And then, you know, and we had just gotten those new microphones. And so I was like, oh, I could totally, and my brain started to run with it. And I started to think about how I would film it and how I would shoot it and how I would edit it and what it would sound like and all of these kind of different things. And then a day or two later or something like that is when Ben asked me if I'd ever thought about it. I'm like, yeah. And I think I told him about the idea that night at jiu-jitsu too. I'm like, this would be so cool. We could film this. And so him and I started talking and decided that we were going to do a podcast together, that we are doing a podcast together. Not that we were going to do a podcast together, him and I. And we started putting our brains together and figuring out what it would be, because him and I have a lot of similarities. We have a lot of things in common, and we also have a lot of differences. So we started to put our brains together and formulate and create this new podcast that we're building, which meant like it was a decision of there's like half-ass ways to do things, and then there's like putting your whole ass into something. And you and I tend to be kind of whole ass people, even though we haven't always been.
Right.
I've spent a good portion of my life being a half-ass kind of guy. I've put half my ass into a lot of different things over the years. And surprise, surprise, they're not around anymore, right? But the things that I tend to put my whole ass into, like our relationship, is still around.
Yeah.
And I've learned over the years that if I want to spend time and energy, especially at this stage of life where we have a lot going on, and I don't know if you heard the earlier part of the episode, but not a lot of what we have going on is like bringing in copious amounts of money. So we have a lot of things going on right now that are in the building stages of cultivating and creating this dream life of ours. So the idea of suddenly taking resource, energy, time, bandwidth, focus, and creating something else on top of what we're already doing and all the things that we're already kind of working towards, it was a hard decision for me to sit with and decide whether or not, because I wasn't going to do it if I was going to half-ass it. I wasn't interested in just doing it to have something fun to do. Ben and I can just have fun doing shit, right? We don't need to go through the process of being like, let's do a podcast because it'll be fun. Yes, it'll be fun. And it can be a lot more than just something that's fun to do. And he also had to sit with it and decide whether or not he wanted to half-ass it. And he's not a real half-ass kind of guy either. He's kind of similar, right? He likes to put his whole ass into things. So we decided to do a podcast, and we decided to take it seriously and to do it legit. And we started to brainstorm together about what names would be, what we could call the podcast. And all along the way, I'm doing that thing that I talked about earlier at the beginning where I'm trusting. I'm trying to feel the pull. I'm trying to feel when I feel expansive and when I feel contracted. And when the idea came forth of like, hey, yeah, we should do a podcast together, that felt expansive. That felt very much like an opening up, and I should go towards that thing. So we were trying to come up with a name, and we kicked around a couple of different things, and nothing really landed yet. Nothing really felt great. And then I was driving somewhere thinking about what we could call it, all these kind of different names. And suddenly I was just like, Brave Men Dare is a pretty good name. Like it was almost like a voice in my head that was like, hey, do you remember you could call it Brave Men Dare? And I'm like, oh, yeah, that's kind of a good name. That might be a really good name for a podcast. So that's what it is. That's what it's called. It's called Brave Men Dare, and it's going to be me and Ben. We have completely redesigned a brand new set. So what you see here on camera, we're recording it in the same studio, but we had to design a completely new set. And that's what we've been working on for the last several weeks. And we recorded the first episode last week, just the other day. And the podcast is going to launch October 1st. I still have to look. I don't even know what day of the week that is.
Would you like me to look? You keep talking.
That's okay. It's not super important at this point, but yeah. Brave Men Dare is coming October 1st, and it's going to be a podcast centered around masculinity, what it means to be a man in today's world. We were also talking recently, Ben and I were having conversations about how difficult it is to not just cultivate friendships as adults, but him and he comes from a military background. He was in the Marines for a long time. And obviously I come from this law enforcement background. There's a certain type of friend that you create, that gets created, friendships that get created in those fields that are trauma bonded friendships and relationships. And they're really strong and powerful, and they feel really, really great. And then oftentimes you get out of those fields, you retire, or, the universe clears the path for you and you're no longer doing those things. Some of those friendships disappear and go away. And him and I were talking about how cool it would be to watch a friendship almost as it's being created. Because Ben and I have been friends for, we've known each other for like a year and a half since we've come to Tennessee, but our friendship really hasn't been being cultivated and created in a conscious way up until, maybe the last 5 or 6 months. So we don't really know each other a ton. And it's a very early stages of our friendship. So I think part of the podcast is going to be, what does it look like to cultivate a friendship with somebody? What does friendship look like in a healthy way between men? Because him and I both know how to do trauma bonded brotherhood type connection and friendships, but how can we do that in a not a trauma bonded, toxic kind of way? How can we do it in a really loving, supportive, healthy way as two adult men? So there's going to be a lot of stuff that we talk about that's in that space: masculinity, fatherhood, brotherhood, just straight up what it is to be a man in the world today. He's also on a similar type journey where he's healing a lot of things. And so it's going to be kind of the healing journeys that we're both navigating and going through as well. And then we're funny as hell. Like,
you're so funny.
Yeah, we have a lot in common. We have very similar personalities. We're going to be bringing a lot of that kind of stuff as well. So I'm excited for it. It's one of those things that I'm like really excited about. It really gets my juices flowing. It really lights me up. I'm really excited about it. And I'm also like nervous as hell. I don't know what's happening. It's the same thing I think I said on the last episode, where it's like, I don't feel prepared for it. I don't feel ready for it yet. I don't feel like I've done enough work to kind of, there's so much stuff that has to be done in between now and on October 1st before we launch. And some of it's like going to get done, and then some of it's not going to get done. And it's going to be what it is, but it's going to be a cool podcast. And there's not a lot that, like, by the time this episode comes out, so when you're listening to this, I don't have anything for you to go and subscribe and follow or look at yet. We haven't even done socials for it yet. But all of that will be coming very soon. And it'll be a weekly podcast. Same thing, you'll be able to listen everywhere. And we hope that if you're a fan of this show, that you obviously come and follow and tune in and watch. And we've got episodes in mind where you'll be coming on. Ben's wife will be coming on. We're going to be interviewing people as well. There's a lot in that space because like masculinity, men's topics, that kind of stuff, I feel like is what podcasting is. Basically, it's a very male dominated venue, media, right? Obviously, the top podcast in the world is led by a man who's very much a masculine, dominant man guy, right? So the market in podcasting is very oversaturated when it comes to like dudes getting together and doing a podcast. I recognize that. And I also don't give a fuck. And I also recognize that Ben and I are different than I think a lot of those podcasts are going to be.
Very much.
And the things that we're going to be talking about, and not just the things that we're going to be talking about, but how we talk about those things. Like we recorded the first episode just the other day, and I was surprised at not just how well it went, but how much stuff we were able to process, talk about, get into. And like later that day, we spent like another 2 hours on the phone talking about things that we want to do on the podcast and ideas that we have. So we've got a lot of stuff that we're going to be creating and doing up for it. So we're excited. Brave Men Dare coming soon, October 1st. And then, yeah, that's kind of like that'll be the big thing for the fall, at least for me.
Mm-hmm.
And then in conjunction with that, it's like we got to plan next year. 2025 is apparently fucking going to be huge. It's 10 years of Steph and Craig. It's 10-year anniversary. There's going to be it's just going to be huge. I'm trying to figure out, because we want 1 million subscribers on YouTube. And I think that's what we do in conjunction with our 10-year trips. 10 trips or to celebrate our 10-year anniversary. And, all along the way, we're, come follow us on YouTube, come follow this journey. We have this goal that we're trying to reach of 1 million followers and all these kind of different things. So lots of 10s, lots of 1s and 0s coming our way next year. So, yeah. I don't know.
That's really amazing.
Yeah.
I'm really excited for it.
Yeah,
I am really, really, really excited for it.
The level with which you have been supportive has been amazing. And that voice that I was talking about earlier, that inner critic that I have, that voice that's so negative, has such a hard time trusting you. Mm. And it's not you, it's trusting the world at large, obviously. But it's been really fun to be able to, like, every time that voice wants to chime in and be like, she's angry at you, she's upset, she doesn't think this is a good idea, all of that kind of stuff, your overpowering supportiveness and love and champion of this idea and this direction has been really, really wonderful, because it's helped in regards to me, like, not just quieting that part, but kind of like, it's going to be all right. You're going to be okay. Everything's going to work out. You can trust that this is okay. Because it's taken up a lot of time, and time is precious. Like, we've got a lot of things that
you're precious.
We're still trying to do and create for the Steph and Craig show. The Steph and Craig show isn't fully launched in some ways, right?
Right.
There's still lots of things that we need to flesh out with this fucking podcast. And we're just going to go ahead and start another one.
And just going to both go do things.
Yeah.
Both go do a lot of things right now.
Lots of things.
Ooh.
Like choke and not be able to finish
like
sentences.
I'm going to choke right there. I was going to say something negative about myself.
Oh, you couldn't even get it out.
I couldn't even get it out.
Your throat was like, we're fucking done with
like,
that
hey.
shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's because I also have that voice, I also have that one that's like, you're taking away from. And I'm like, no, you're not. You're adding to.
Yeah.
How are you creating something and adding it to your life and going to describe that as a taking away from? We're literally creating and adding to.
Yeah, I think a lot about, because when we start formulating Brave Men Dare and start thinking about what it's going to be, and, we have a lot of people that listen to this podcast and a lot of people that follow us on social media that follow us because of the relationship stuff and the kind of the inner work stuff that we talk about and the emotionality behind things. And I don't know if it's a surprise to people that are listening, but a lot of the people that listen and follow us are women. Because women are the ones that are involved in that stuff. Women are the ones that are prioritizing their relationship and healing and making, things better than they are. Men aren't really into that space a whole lot. And so part of me hopes that if you like this podcast, the Steph and Craig show, but maybe your husband doesn't or your partner doesn't, then send them over to Brave Men Dare, and maybe they'll find something there that they like and resonate with, because I'm excited to be able to show up differently on both podcasts, right? There's parts of me that, ideally I'll probably end up being the same all the way around, because that's the end goal, right? Did we talk about that at the beginning of part 2 or part 1?
I think it was the end of part 1. And you'll definitely show up as you, but it is a different energy.
Yeah.
It's going to feel different. You're going to talk about different things because it is different. So it's not that fragmenting. You're you on absolute both of them, but they're going to have a different feel. And that's like, yeah.
They definitely have a different feel.
Yeah.
So
I have had the opportunity to sneak peek it, and I'm really excited.
Yeah.
I'm really, really excited. And it also comes out, you said it's on a Tuesday.
Oh, is it?
October 1st is on a Tuesday, which happens to be ruled by Mars, masculine energy, action energy, healthy energy.
Nice.
So, yeah.
Maybe new Brave Men Dare episodes every Tuesday. Right?
I like it.
Hasn't that been my thing since we saw that Ryan Gosling movie? It's a fucking Tuesday.
It's a fucking Tuesday.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah. There's I think it's Gray Man. That's his Ryan Gosling on Netflix, where he's a spy, hitman. I don't even know what he is. He's just an action star. And life's always crazy and it's always hard. And he's like, yeah, it's a fucking Tuesday, dude. That's just what it is. So maybe that's when Brave Men Dare is. New episodes every Tuesday.
Okay. We'll have to watch it again.
Have to see.
Yes. Episodes every Tuesday. I'm thinking of the show right now just because I want to hear that. It's every, it's a Tuesday. I want to make that connection.
Right.
Because it's going to be serendipitous, but
yeah,
I'm really excited.
Oh, you don't remember that scene from Gray Man?
I remember you saying it. And I'm trying to remember. I'm like, I feel like I've seen it.
Yeah, we watched it together. We had a whole connection about how that's our thing, where we go through hard things and life is crazy. We're like, yeah, that's a Tuesday.
I didn't remember it coming from the movie because you said it so well. Like, I know
that's
you
mine,
say
baby.
it. Well,
sorry, Ryan. Sorry, writers. Sorry, whoever wrote the script for Gray Man. That's mine. That's me, right? Did you just go to 4, babe?
I think I did. But it was just a second.
It's okay.
It was just a second. Yeah, I'm really excited for you. I'm really proud of you. I know, like, I have another, like, version of this, too.
Yeah.
Where watching I see the trajectory and how it was aligned and how you were guided. And this, it doesn't feel like you picked it back up. It feels like this was the intent and the purpose, and it was guided and wait, like this started here to create this connection, to create this, to get you here for this to come to life.
Yeah.
And it's just like, well, I love it.
I do too.
I love it. And I'm so excited. And I'm so proud of you. And I'm so excited for this. I'm so excited for this. I'm so excited for you.
Thank you. Yeah. It's exciting.
It's very exciting. It's very exciting.
Yeah.
Yes.
So thank you, everybody, for sticking around for 2-part episodes of what's coming up with Steph and Craig and what we have in the works and where we're heading and what we're doing. And truthfully, this is probably going to be a shift for this podcast, where from this point forward, you're probably going to get a lot more of when I say the real us, like, I guess I'm hesitant to speak this because I don't want to, everything prior to this, it's been us. This is who we are. We show up vulnerably and we share and everything like that. But we're at a phase of our healing, and I think you'd probably agree to this. Sometimes, I am practicing on the codependency and not speaking for you, but I think you would agree, and you can definitely say otherwise. We are at a place with the level of work that we've done with ourselves where we feel safer now to show more of who we actually are. And that means that you're going to be getting more of our vulnerability, more of our truth, more of our rawness, more of the reality of what this actually has been and looked like for both of us. Because like you said at some point, and you've said it a lot too, where, we talk a lot about healing together. We talk about what it takes. We talk about cultivating healthy relationships with each other and all this kind of stuff. And it's like you said, it's truthfully because we fucking went through it.
Yeah.
Like we have suffered and gone through copious amounts of things in the course of our relationship in the last 12 years of knowing each other to be able to get to this point.
Yeah.
And we've learned a lot of things, a lot of lessons, a lot of what not to do. And
yeah, we had to check like almost all of those off the list.
I think so. I think we did a not to do list first.
Right.
And now we're on the, hey, do this instead.
Well, what else is left? Okay. Healing, healthy, love, it's like strong, secure. And we've never tried that. Let's give that a shot.
Yeah. We just tried shame.
Right.
We just tried depression. We tried anxiety,
Guilt,
fear, frozenness. We did all of those for 40 years. They didn't work very well.
Fine. We'll try something else.
So now we're just going to try courage and hope and love. And inspiration, and
Yeah. The other parts still come along sometimes, but yeah.
yeah. This was fun, babe.
This was fun.
I don't know if we've done we did a 2-part episode with Matt Nash
We have,
for the beginning, but we haven't done one just ourselves. This is cool. This is fun. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you for hanging in with us through both parts. And again, if you haven't watched the first one, go watch the first one. You get to hear all about Steph and what she's doing and where she's at and what's been coming up for her. And then this one was kind of what Craig's been doing and what's been coming up for Craig. And who knows what's next week?
Yeah.
We literally don't know.
We literally don't know.
What's coming up next week, right? I might get high after this episode and Billy's going to open up and we're going to be going in a completely fucking different direction. That's the other thing
Might
is
bring
like,
my new spider friend to talk.
yeah, we have learned to trust that it's like, oh, universe, you want us to drop everything that we were doing and then do this other completely different thing? Okay, we'll do it.
That has been, that's a whole other episode.
I don't think that's going to happen. Who fucking knows?
Right.
We don't know. Tune in next week and find out. Expect the best.
Plan for the greatest.
And subscribe to Steph and Craig on YouTube.
We got a wild ride. Wait and see, you and me. We were meant to be.
We want to make something perfectly clear. This podcast is intended for entertainment and educational purposes only. It is not intended to be used as a substitute for professional advice. We're sharing with you our own personal experiences and insights, things we have found to be helpful on our healing journey. But we are not licensed therapists. If you need help, it's important to seek out a qualified professional. Remember, we believe that we all do better when we heal together. See you soon.